Welcome to the Behind the Bits podcast. Your host, Scott Curtis, wants to learn everything he can about stand-up comedy and take you along for the ride. Scott and his guests talk serious about comedy in every episode. Behind the Bits will uncover knowledge from different perspectives on subjects such as writing and performing stand-up comedy, as well as booking shows and the comedy life. If you're thinking about becoming a stand-up comic, already in the comic game, or a comedy nerd, Behind the Bits is the show for you. Now, let's get Behind the Bits.
Hey, BTB buddies, I wanted to let you know that I have a Patreon page now so that you can support the show. Check out patreon.com/BTBPC and check out the cool stuff you can get for as little as $2 per month. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks, as always, for listening. All right, we are live with Behind the Bits, the rapid round with Adam Degi, who is a comic from... Are you from Grand Rapids?
That's where I live, yeah.
Okay.
We can say that, sure.
Okay.
I grew up in Muskegon, but all the comedy I've done, or at least where I started, is in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
Sure. That's where I live, so.
Great. Like I told you, Adam, the rapid round is kind of a Entertainment Tonight type thing, where I tease the live audience with your story, and then we go off live and get the real story, and they have to subscribe to the podcast to listen. So everybody who's watching, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can hear Adam's whole story. Now,
please do.
Before I forget, we did a mic together. What's the mic that has the funny face thing in the background?
Sunday Night Funny?
Yeah, Sunday Night Funny. So that was in February. I think you were the last guy to go up, and I was like the second or third guy to go up.
Okay. Yeah, in the winter, I think I remember that.
Yeah.
It's that's a fun mic. Brian B does a good job putting that together.
Yeah, that's a really cool mic. And I was with my wife, and she said, all the comics are over there. Why don't you go sit with the comics? And I'm like, no, it's like 2 hours from my house. I said, I'm not going to leave you to sit here by yourself. And she said, I'll make friends. Right. Don't worry about it. But I stayed with her anyway. But yeah, I recognize you.
I leave my wife and go sit with the comics. Sometimes, not always. If she gets dressed up and she comes out and it's I feel like we should be sitting together, I'll do it. But
yeah, no doubt.
She's been to enough shows that I'll leave her here and there.
Yeah. So these standard questions, let's get to them. When did you start doing stand-up, Adam?
Man, I started comedy in, I think, 2005, a couple years out of high school. I mean, the first however many years don't even count. I don't think I had a car until, or I had a car and then it broke down and I couldn't really even get to open mics and gigs and, until maybe 2006 or 7 at least. And I'm sure I had other comics drag me around and they were kind of, my rides. But yeah, I think it was like 2005. So it's been 15 years.
Wow. And was there any comedy outlet at all in Muskegon?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
The first time I got on stage growing up in that area was probably a talent show.
Uh-huh.
And then, God, there was a bar called Dreamers or something that did have comedy here and there, but this was after I started. And now there's a few places to perform in the Muskegon area. There's a brewery, Unruly Brewery, that has some really good shows. And then I think maybe a mic somewhere, but back in 2005, absolutely not. And that was part of the appeal. I mean, I was born in Grand Rapids. My old man lived here, and I started working in the Bob where the comedy club is, Dr. Grin's.
Yeah.
And I'd leave work and then just be in the comedy club and hanging out, and kind of got started that way. So Yeah, I had to get out of Muskegon.
Yeah. Well, I know they have a Gordon food service there because I used to work for Gordon's in the 90s. So yeah, I remember that part.
That's about as good as it gets in Muskegon.
Yeah. And they don't do comedy at Gordon's. I don't know why.
No, I don't think so.
So, who were your comedy influences? What got you, first of all, why did you start, and who was it that made you want to start?
Well, for me, it was the cliche class clown, whatever those stupid high school yearbook votes are. What are those called? I don't know the name, but
I'm 56. We didn't have those.
But I was voted, class comedian. It was, I was always kind of the kid who was a smart ass, but I certainly wasn't a fighter. I probably should have got my ass kicked and maybe got out of a lot of fights by making people laugh. But always was just kind of, class clown, knew that I wanted to be funny. And, but believe it or not, my influences were, I was really into like black comics, like Kings of Comedy was huge for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was a huge fan of Martin Lawrence, Eddie Murphy, obviously. Richard Pryor was before my generation, but and then Chris Rock. But I knew I couldn't try to emulate those guys, because I was white and that it wouldn't have worked. So, but those were my comedy influences really before, I got a little older. Then Dane Cook was huge in the early 2000s. And I never wanted to be necessarily a comic similar to Dane Cook, although I think he gets a bad rap now, but when he was selling out Madison Square Garden, I mean, he was,
I always thought he was funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked him. My son liked him. So I would watch with my son. So maybe that's why I liked him so much.
Oh, I can remember sitting around with my buddies when we were, 19, 20 and just dying laughing. Man.
Yeah.
That's the first, I think it was like, was it Harmful if Swallowed? I can't remember. He had that first Comedy Central special with like the tank top and he was all crazy. And then he had those first couple albums. He was great. So, I mean, he was definitely a guy that I admired. At least those were the MySpace days. He actually got real big on MySpace and then was touring and was the biggest comic in the world at the time.
Yeah.
So I guess that was the first big non-black influence that I had.
Yeah.
Where it was more of an eye-opener, like, oh, I can do this.
Right. I've seen some stuff about Dane Cook going around saying that he's got a puffy face now, and I'm like, you son of a bitches, people get older. Just
yeah, that's not okay. The guy's got to be close to 50 now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look like I did when I was 30. So
is it not okay to age or have any flaws at any point? Or people almost too, if you have any amount of fame or wealth, you can get plastic surgery and pay for Botox and stuff. But I mean, Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah. Yeah. It hits you no matter what
who you are. It'll eventually, catch up with you. So,
and even if you look good, everything hurts. So it doesn't matter.
I never really picked on Dane Cook. I mean, is the guy can he be a shitbag? I'm sure, but he had undeniable talent and was really big for a long time and did his thing.
Yeah. This is one I like to ask everybody that's a little bit off topic. Are you currently inspired by any books that you're reading, music that you're listening to, podcasts, magazines, or anything? Have you consumed anything that kind of lit off a light bulb in your head?
I should certainly, I mean, anybody that knows me will tell you I'm a moron and I should probably read more. I actually just recently read like the Andre Agassi autobiography. You remember that tennis player?
Yeah.
It's pretty wild actually. I don't know that influenced me comedy wise at all, but it was definitely crazy to hear stories just about how nuts his life was. But now that I'm on the subject, he actually did an interview on Letterman once, and I just randomly came by it on YouTube, and it was like top 10 biggest like confessions ever on late night. And in the book, he talks about smoking crystal meth. So I thought for sure, he must bring this up on Letterman. Like, yeah, Dave, I actually smoked meth when I was a number one tennis player in the world. But the confession was how he was bald and wore a wig. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's the confession? People give more of a shit if a guy's bald, which is insulting to me because I am, than if they smoked meth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely read, like I read the book, I think it's I Killed. I read it was a biography, Rickles I read. I read a lot of comedy books. It's been a while. I feel like that's something I did more in the beginning, and I should be more of like a student of the game. I should probably watch more comedy and read more stuff and study the craft and be better about that kind of stuff. But especially during COVID, if I'm being honest, man, I've had more time than ever, and I've probably been lazier than ever as far as my comedy brain, which is not good. But
yeah. Well, I've seen the weight loss journey though, so that's at least you're doing something. I'm
trying. I haven't had the best bill of health the last few years, so I figured I should try to do something to move me in a positive direction. So, and I never, like I said, I never had more time to actually, get off my ass and try to make stuff happen. So
yeah, I did the same thing because I started gaining weight, and I used to be super fat, and I knew that I could get super fat again, and I didn't want to do that. So I started walking, I started running, I got a stress fracture on my foot, and I found out I'm too old for this shit. So I just started walking again. So,
trust me, man. I'm 36, and if there's anybody who legitimately enjoys running outside on the concrete, they have to be the level of sociopath directly below a serial killer.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? Because it is not enjoyable or appealing in any way. And it's not a lazy thing for me. I don't mind moving and exercising, even cardio. Like I'll get on like a lateral or whatever the hell those stepper. I'll do that for an hour, however long. But running is just so bad on your knees and ankles and back. And I even bought some running shoes, and it's improved, but man, it is not ideal.
Yeah, it's not good at all. My wife's got a bad knee from running, and her orthopedic guy said, just don't run anymore ever. And that was bad for her, but now we bike and stuff, but it is what it is. And when you're old, you're not supposed to do any of that stuff.
No, there's other options.
Yeah. Ellipticals are great.
Mm-hmm.
So the last question is, what comedy album or special would you consider to be your all-time favorite?
Oh boy, that's a good one. Man, there's so many. Gosh. It's, if I'm being honest, it's probably a Bill Burr special. I'm a real big Burr guy, and I don't know. It's hard for me to narrow it down to one, but probably not one of the ones in the last few years, but man.
Yeah. Anything.
I can't put my finger on which one. It's hard to pick, but it's probably a Burr special.
Yeah, I like everything he's ever done, and I've been pursuing him for the podcast a little bit, but you know how that goes. So
right,
it may happen.
He's a busy guy.
Yeah,
but yeah, probably a Burr special, I think.
Great,
but like I said, I mean, there's so many of the ones I loved growing up. Even I'm so bad at remembering the titles of these things, but there was a few of the Chris Rock ones. Bigger and Blacker was fantastic. And gosh, when you start thinking about all the great specials you've watched, since you started comedy, there's so many, it's hard to, who I really missed that at the time, I guess I didn't appreciate him as a stand-up as much as I should have, is Robin Williams. That guy was just such a phenomenal talent as an actor and a stand-up. And now I wish I would have enjoyed it more, tried to watch it more, because I always thought of him as an actor first in comedy class. But I mean, he started with the improv and comedy, and
yeah. I've gotten to talk to a lot of people who worked with him, and they say he was just a force of nature, and he was always on. So
he was one of those people that it was like, I don't know how you could ever have him do anything other than close a show.
Yeah.
Even if he was at like the Comedy Store, or one of these showcase famous clubs where you just kind of show up and bump people.
Yeah.
But even then, you'd have to be like, you'd think that they'd be like, Robin, please just go on last, because nobody wants to follow you.
People did have to follow him, and he was. I talked to some guys when he was trying to go from the smaller room to the main room, and then they finally let him go, but they put him on first, and it was like nobody could even. And Letterman, I think Letterman was following him.
Alone, let alone the voices, and, characters, and just he was a maniac.
Yeah. All right, great. So at the end of the live thing, for everybody that's watching, do you have anything that you would like to promote? And we'll do this at the end too. Anything you want to promote or talk about that you'd like to send people to?
I mean, I'm on all the social media, Instagram. I've got rid of my Facebook news feed, the personal page, because that was just making me want to walk in front of a bus.
Yeah.
But I do still have a fan page on Facebook, and then I do something every year called the Degi Draft, which is essentially just a video submission contest where comedians and people who don't do comedy basically submit videos and try to get themselves drafted into the NFL, which if you go to the Degi Draft Room or the Degi Draft page on Facebook, you can find more information on that. But it's a lot of fun. There's prizes and incentive to be involved, and it's gotten bigger and better every year. And that takes place every year in April, with the sports world kind of being up in the air. I don't know what's going to happen this next year, but the Degi Draft, and then just all the social media, I guess. Unfortunately, I don't have any shows to promote because I was supposed to be in Iowa next week. That got canceled.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to headline the showcase in Ann Arbor in October. I don't know if that's going to happen. So it's like, I want to tell people to come, but do I think that the club is going to be open? I don't at this point.
Yeah, it's a roll of the dice right now. I got to tell you that Dan West is never happier than when the Degi Draft is going on.
Yeah. I love Dan, man. He's one of the MVPs of that thing. He's always super involved and super enthusiastic about it, and I think the misconception is people think that you have to love sports or be a sports fan to be involved or to enjoy it, and you really don't. I mean, there's people that are involved that I've never met and have no interest in comedy, let alone the NFL or sports, and they're all about it. So it's really just an excuse to talk smack and kind of brag and just it's if nothing else, it's another outlet to just create content and just be silly and take advantage of the internet, especially now when, we're not all able to do the things we're doing.
Right.
So,
no doubt.
Good time.
No doubt. So let's get back into when you started comedy. It was kind of an extension of what you were doing in high school. What was that first time you got on stage and did an open mic like?
Oh boy. Well, like I said, I think I did a talent show originally, which, man, I can't even count that because who knows what I had jokes about my mother throwing shoes at me, and I'm sure it was real corny. It was just probably juvenile, but I couldn't have been dirty. So only to a certain extent. And then, but it had to be Dr. Grin's. And I used to leave work. I'd have a chef jacket on. I worked in the kitchen. I definitely wasn't a chef. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I used to help in banquets. So I would be bringing food in and out of the kitchen, and I'd leave, the club with the chef jacket still on. And the MC at the time, his name was Billy Grin. I don't know what his real last name was, but they called him Billy Grin.
Yeah.
And he would almost beg people, like, do you want to do time? Which is crazy because now it's, booked months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost, difficult to get on. But at the time, back in the early 2000s, they were struggling to get people to do it. So there was a ton of stage time, and I knew when I started working there that that's what I wanted to do. But once it finally actually started happening, it was pretty cool. And I think, I think I had probably more success in the beginning than I should have. And then that probably actually wasn't a good thing. I know a lot of guys will have maybe too much success because they have all their friends there.
Yeah.
And, you get that bringer open mic or showcase or, competition audience. And then you really find out how funny you aren't when you perform in front of 5 people you don't know in Ohio.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'm not that good at this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's almost better to, I don't know, because then again, if you do real bad the first dozen times you get on stage because nobody's there to support you, then maybe you're scared away. But
yeah,
it's unfortunate that's when you have the most support is in the beginning, because that's when you're the worst.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when everybody comes to watch you. And then years later, you're like, hey, no, I'm working at the club now. And been there, done that.
Totally dig that. And the problem is they have to hear the same stuff so many times, where you've changed a word, or you're trying to make it better, but to them it's the same stuff. They know what the punch is. They
don't notice the little, the little changes and the subtractions and additions and any tags, or they just remember specifics.
Yeah. I can totally dig that. So how long did it take you from doing the open mics at Dr. Grin's to actually getting your first paid gig?
Man, I want to say at least 3 or 4 years. Now they used to do, which was a totally unnecessary spot that they paid, where they, at the club there, Funny Business, the booker in town, they book stuff all over the country, most of the Midwest, but they still book Grins. And at the time they would have their house MC, which the club employed and paid, but then they would have a feature and headliner, just like most clubs. But then between the MC and the feature, for whatever reason, they'd have a guy do like 10 minutes.
Okay.
I think for them it was almost like a showcase or a guest spot for a comic they wanted to work elsewhere or to feature at the club in the future. And just to know that this person was worthy, they would have them do a spot, but you got like $100, which is insane. 10 minutes. And it didn't last long. I think they realized pretty quickly, we don't need to do this. We'll do this for free. So I actually that was the first paid gig I ever had. I got the check blown up. It's still in a frame. It's collecting dust in my basement now somewhere.
That's really cool though.
Yeah, that was I guess a cool way to have your first paid gig, because there wasn't, I'm sure there was still a lot of pressure. I mean, it was so stupid because I went out and like I got some dress pants and a shirt and a tie, to which is like, in hindsight, I'd never dress up on stage.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, oh, it's my first pay gig. I look nice. And I remember when I was in the store buying a tie, some asshole that worked for some pyramid scheme approached me and was like, hey, you look nice. You look like a go-getter. You look like you're going to places. You want big things. And then of course he had me meet him at Panera or something a while later. And as soon as he slid the packet to me across the table, I was like, ah, shit, I've heard about this. I fell for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so crazy to look at pictures and see that I was like trying to, I don't know what I was going for, to be the tie guy. Which a lot of guys pull it off. Guys wear suits, and there's some really funny guys who do pull it off. But I don't. My persona on stage and just my act in general doesn't really go hand in hand with someone who's in a shirt and tie.
Yeah, no doubt. And I don't some of the old school guys still think it's necessary, and
you're up there talking about God knows what.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of the unwritten rules in comedy that I think that we need to get over, but like, do I think you should wear shorts to a paid show? No, probably not.
Yeah.
But do I think you need to wear a suit jacket and a tie? No. And I would guess that the people that do would prefer that not everybody does, because that's, especially as a white male comic where there's 1,000 more of us than anybody else, a million more. That's one of the only ways you can stand out is your clothes or your attire, or that becomes part of your personality and your act, really.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
So
when did you get enough material together that you could do a solid feature?
It probably had to be 2010, 11, 12. So we're talking 5-6 years after I started. I mean, you rotate so much of the same crap in the beginning. And I think we all think we have more time than we do before we do.
Mm-hmm.
Because in reality, when you say I have 30 minutes, you should probably at least know in your head you have more than 30 minutes, or because who knows what can happen. And I mean, can you do 30 minutes if you got to be PG or PG-13? And I'm sure it took me a while. And there's a difference also between having 30 minutes. I mean, I have probably 7 hours of material. How much of that is good?
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, I mean, not everybody's Bill Burr putting out an hour special every year. Those are realistic expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, so unrealistic expectations. So it probably took me, a while that I really felt comfortable. I'm sure I said I did before I did. And, but yeah, probably 5 or 6 years before I felt like I had a solid 30 that I knew would go well.
Mm-hmm. Between in that formative time when you're getting that first half hour together, what formed your style of comedy and your writing? I mean, where did that come from, where you became you?
I think for me, I've always kind of, I don't know if it's because I'm lazy or I have ADD, but I've never had that much of a structure to my act. I mean, in the beginning, I definitely had, a set list, and I had my first joke and my last joke and everything in between. And I stuck to that because, I wanted to make sure I did well. I wanted every joke to hit as much as possible. And I wanted to have as solid of a set beginning to end as possible. But now, if I'm being honest, and it shouldn't be this way, I need to get better at it, especially this far into the game. But I've got enough material that I kind of go up there and let the crowd and show take me where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm an above average comic as far as crowd work. Like, I'm pretty good at riffing and doing crowd work and just doing things off the cuff, which, as much as I think is a nice skill to have, it also can, I think, derail sets, or maybe not derail sets, but maybe you don't get as quality of a set as you could have because you get off track and you're messing with people. And a lot of times they'll do crowd work and I'll be doing stuff off the cuff, and then I'll go back to the material and the audience is like, well, what is this? Why don't you keep making fun of my wife? Why are you telling jokes again? So I don't know. There's pros and cons.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that I feel like you've either got it or you don't. I mean, you can get better at it, but there's some guys who they just kind of stay in their comfort zone and they would never try that, which is fine. That they may be phenomenal writers and they don't need to.
Right.
But I feel like there's a lot of people who watch live comedy who appreciate it. And I think that's what really separates live from just something you could watch on YouTube or a special or anything from your phone or television. That's what really makes people feel like they were there at that specific show and they were part of that show specifically. So as far as my style, I'm kind of all over the place. I do some one-liners, but then I also have some intermediate jokes, and I also have some longer bits. There's a lot of stuff I do where I kind of talk really fast and I blow through stuff on purpose because it's the purpose is to just ramble and then follow it with a punchline. And so I don't know if I have it. Like I'm definitely not just a one-liner guy. I'm definitely not a story comic. Mm-hmm. And I'm not what you'd call a physical comic necessarily either. So I'm okay at a lot of stuff, not great at anything.
Yeah. You know? I really wouldn't discount the crowd work stuff because, people like Ian Bagg and Bob Zaney have really, made
a career out of it. Yeah.
Made a career. And Bob Zaney does the same shit on stage every single time, but it's the crowd work that you go for.
Right. I mean, the Ian Baggs and Zaneys of the world, but the audience that's there every week, they don't understand that, like, it is crowd work. Yeah. But you know what people are going to say and you know how to, maneuver your way through an audience where it seems like it's all off the cuff or off the top of your head and spontaneous. But in reality, you know what's going to happen and what you're going to say. But at the same time, I'm sure they're constantly, bringing in new because something happened at a show that never happened before and thinking of new stuff. I mean, but that's a lot of people love that and they wouldn't. Those are their favorite comics and they wouldn't want it any other way. I mean, I think some people maybe get bored with just someone who's just kind of repetitive and their tone and cadence is just the same for 45 minutes and maybe they don't do anything off the cuff or I don't know, maybe it's too predictable for some people, but yeah, I personally selfishly just have more fun that way because even as someone who I do try to write a decent amount, even when I'm on the road for my own sanity, but because I'm lazy, I don't write as much as I should. And then I'm on stage and sometimes I'm not even listening to the words coming out of my mouth. I just know I say this, I get a laugh. I say this, I get a bigger laugh. I say this, I get the biggest laugh. And I'm just going through the motions.
Yeah.
Before you know it, I've been up there a half hour and I'm just, it becomes a job. And for me to stay sane and feel like I'm still enjoying it, I've got to do the crowd work just to make it feel new and refreshing. And it's definitely hurt. It's hurt me as a comic because I mean, it should be more important to me to get on stage and develop new material and take those chances because you really have to become more comfortable with bombing than you are with always having to do well and be able to swallow your pride enough to develop that new stuff and take chances and take risks.
Right.
More so than just, I got to do well so I enjoy this and I don't have to feel the pain of something not doing well, but you have.
Yeah. And what you said about not having a particular style, I listened to your album today while I was driving, and that's his name is my name too. First off, I always like to ask comics because these days comics have to do all the work to get their album out on their own. So first off, what possessed you to want to do an album, and what did it take from saying I'm going to do an album to actually releasing it to get that done?
Well, I think I just wanted, part of the motivation was I want to get this material documented and then not do it anymore, at the least do it less.
Yeah.
So I wanted something that would just be there forever on the internet and in an album form that people could buy on iTunes or other platforms. But it was never about people purchasing it. That wasn't the biggest goal as far as making money. I'm not famous. I knew I wasn't going to sell that many albums. Really, I just wanted, a broader platform for people to listen to my material with, Pandora and all those outlets and then YouTube as well. I think it's even on. And then just once you're on Sirius, that's when you can really start getting some listeners and even accumulate a little bit of money depending on how many stations you're played on. So that was kind of the motivation for me, is just the more people that hear my stuff, the better. And just as an excuse to have started what felt like a new 45, or at least mostly new material.
Mm-hmm. So that album is kind of the culmination of 12 years of your best stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, what's crazy is there's bits I did on that album that I haven't done since that I didn't do before.
Yeah.
Legitimately the bits that I had done maybe once or twice at a mic before, and then was like, you know what? I'm doing this at my home club. I've got a lot of friends and family. If there's ever a night I know this will go well, it'll be tonight. And then maybe bits that I just know if I did them at a random club, maybe I'm selling myself short. Maybe they would do well, but probably not as well as that night. But part of me, I think, likes the album more because there's stuff that I kind of did kind of only, and it just made it different.
Well, this album has such a, it has an arc like I've never seen on one before. So first off, one of the things I really like is somebody who can do a good misdirect, and the beginning of yours with all those misdirects. I'm so gullible. I'm like, okay, he's done with the misdirects on this one. This one can't be a misdirect. It is. And I mean, that was like a machine gun of misdirects, and it takes a certain kind of mind to do that, because I don't think I could think of a misdirect to save my life. And has that been something you've always done?
I don't think always. I think I discovered that I enjoyed doing it and I was okay at it. And then I just kind of thought, let me keep doing this. And again, selfishly, it makes it funner for me, because when you can make an audience think you're going one way and then you go the opposite, it's a lot of fun. And yeah, I think the more I did, I just started stringing them together. And I think I just like people's reactions, even if it's not a laugh and just So I never had I never wanted to be like Anthony Jeselnik necessarily, but to mix in some stuff like that as far as misdirection, it's always been fun. So
yeah, I really like that. And then going on to the your dad and Breaking Bad, that's obviously very personal and something that you needed to get out. And I think you did it well. And I think just in listening to the audience, I had it going in the car. It feels like that people that knew you were even a little taken aback by that. Is that?
Oh yeah. Well, I think. Well, here's the thing: is my brother was there. My mom, who they had been divorced for years, but it's still the father of her sons, and I mean they've always known me as I'll joke about anything, and nothing is really off limits. And for a comic, any comic, especially myself, I think I've always used comedy as therapy. It is cliche to say, but I mean, it is therapeutic. And especially when it comes to, death. And then kind of when I figured out a way to kind of, compare my dad to Walter White from Breaking Bad, I was just like, I got to do this. Cause I mean, I love my dad, obviously, but I love the show Breaking Bad. And when I when I started thinking of the similarities and just how ridiculous that show is to believe that someone with stage 4 lung cancer could accomplish all those things. I mean, you can't even hold food down. You're getting chemo and radiation and shit to just be up on your feet for that long and, become a drug lord. It's ridiculous.
I think they showed him actually acting sick.
At my dad and the bit went well. That's another bit that I haven't done a lot since the album, because people just get weird about cancer. Obviously, I know doing jokes about me having cancer, people get weird, even when I'm talking about myself. Because I understand everybody has been affected by cancer in one way or another. So not everybody's going to have as dark of a sense of humor. Yeah. But also just because not everybody has watched Breaking Bad, and I think maybe the reference will just go over people's heads. But it's definitely one of my favorite bits.
Yeah,
anytime you can take something personal and make it funny, it's
I actually listened to it twice because I thought it was that good. What kind of cancer do you have?
Well, Currently, I don't have any, unfortunately.
Okay. What are you in remission from?
I had stage 3 melanoma. So I had a mole on my back that came back melanoma, and then I had a surgery to remove that and a bunch of skin off my back, and then they found it in the lymph nodes, putting it in stage 3. So I had some lymph nodes removed, and they went back and took the rest of them out under the left arm. And I did treatment for like a year. It wasn't chemo or radiation. It was immunotherapy, which is a lot less, it's not as severe as far as like side effects, and it's not as awful. Thank God. And then I'm cancer free now. Now it's just kind of, your every quarterly scans and brain MRIs and all that stuff. Well, unfortunately, melanoma is a cancer that the longer after treatment, unlike other cancers, rather than it being less likely, it's more likely to come back. I mean, it's melanoma. That's just, it's going to at some point. It's just a matter of where and how fast and how severe, and hope that they can catch it. But fortunately for me, the advancements in medicine and treatments for melanoma specifically in just the last 5 years have really gotten a lot better. Yeah. Even 5 years ago, I don't know what they would have done. So there's people in worse situations, and things could be much worse. And I'm just taking it a day at a time. And, it's a win for now.
Yeah. Well, that's great. You're in remission. Thinking about the closer for that album, that's another one I had to listen to a couple times. The Anonymous Invite, I think it's called, something like that.
Yeah, it's I think that's the Austin Tea Party.
Yeah. So where did that come from? Because I have never heard anything like it.
The one and only time I ever did that bit, and the motivation I think was, I was just thinking like, how could I get back at all my exes and these people who don't like me? I'll get them all to a party and then essentially pee on them from a balcony. It's really ridiculous. It's definitely not anything I feel like I could do it again. And it went about as well as it could that night. I think the reason I was looking forward to it was just I had some callbacks and some ridiculous things.
Well, the setup was just gold. I absolutely
might have just literally been because instead of the Boston Tea Party, I could call it the Austin Tea Party. And everything was just the mansion and the guy playing the piano and all this. But maybe I should bring it back. I don't know. I might get some oohs and ahs, but it was fun to do.
I really liked it. That and the Breaking Bad one were my two favorites on that album. So that leads me to ask, it seems like, I don't know you, but I'm a Facebook friend, and I see that you're working on yourself, and things seem to be changing physically for you, and that usually means things are changing mentally for you. It feels like maybe you have a different outlook, and maybe that may go into your comedy. Do you feel like maybe your comedy is going to change a little bit just because you're a different person?
I'll still have, some darker bits and that dry sense of humor and whatnot, but I definitely don't take things for granted anymore. I think I enjoy the craft more than ever. I mean, not just because of having cancer and beating it and just being happy that I'm able to get on stage and perform, but especially during COVID. I mean, the little opportunities you have, you definitely appreciate. But I mean, you really just, when you have to think about your own mortality, it definitely changes things, not only from a comedy perspective, but just life in general. So you don't take things for granted. You want to use your time wisely as far as, trying to pursue your dreams and do the things that you enjoy. But you realize what you enjoyed all along, and maybe you lost focus and we're out of touch as far as that is concerned for a while. Cause there's so many, I think, people in entertainment or comedy in general that are so hell bent on like becoming famous and getting followers and stuff. And that's, at the end of the day, that only means so much. I mean, you really have to enjoy the craft. And, if I'm being honest, most of what I think I've enjoyed about comedy is just meeting people and hanging out and shooting the shit and just, the fun, the joy you have on stage, being able to make a room full of strangers laugh, is something that I think a lot of people admire and that a lot of people would never be able to do, that they would love to be able to do. And it's just a really cool thing. And just to be able to do what you enjoy. I mean, not everybody can say that. Some people have jobs that they hate. And it's definitely, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I want to change gears for a second here because I've been having discussions with different comics and they're split like 50-50. And this is the first time I've talked about it actually in an interview, but, I think you're somebody who knows audiences. So what is going on is there's a camp of people that say that no matter what the audience is, it could be the worst audience in the world. It's your job as a comic to adjust and make them laugh. And then on the other side, there is, hey, I've got my show, and people that come to a comedy club should want to laugh and they should play along. And then there's the middle ground where there's give and take. How do you feel about audiences? Obviously, I mean, I know you've had good ones and bad ones. How do you feel? What do you think is their duty and your duty?
I 100% disagree with the audience is always right.
Okay.
It's just like the customer's always right. Bullshit. There's plenty of ass. Listen, if I do an act that works well 90% of the time, am I going to change it so it works well 100% of the time, or try to cater to that 10% of people to make them happy? I mean, and that's the thing too, is not everybody has motivation to make everybody laugh.
Yeah.
I think for me as a comic, I don't necessarily want everybody to love me. That's not my goal. I would rather that, it's for some people and maybe it's not for everybody else. I mean, I don't get like political necessarily or try to offend or upset people, but I think you can get into there's a lot of, quote unquote bar comics who got into this, an area where they were trying to make everybody happy and appease everyone. And, they become not the comic they wanted to be. Do I want to be a comic who does really well at a comedy club, or do I want to be a comic that always does really well at a road gig at a bar? I definitely, should you try to make everybody laugh as much as you can? Yes. But let's be honest, there's just some audiences that suck. There 100% is just some audiences that aren't good. If you do 10 shows and 9 of those shows you do really well and one of the shows you didn't do well, was that necessarily your fault if you did the same thing? No. I mean, Can you always get better and improve? Sure. I mean, if you get on stage and you're just a dick to people and you don't really bring it and they can tell you didn't bring the energy and you phoned it in and they were kind of turned off by that, or you were being combative and just trying to upset people or going for shock factor, and you definitely don't want to lose the focus of being funny. That should always be, I think, your main goal. You shouldn't just use the stage as a soapbox to, express your views and opinions, and you can incorporate them as long as you make things funny, and that's the end goal of every joke. But no, I mean, saying the audience is always right is ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's funny, comedy club audiences, they seem to be made up of, just a few types of people. You got the bachelorette parties, you got the group of 30 somethings that went out to dinner and they said, "Oh, let's go to a comedy club." And then, and they come in with no expectations. And you got people my age that are doing their one time a year that they go out and do something. And, if you get too many of either of them, then the audience can skew away from you really quickly. Like if you get a whole room of me, of my age people, I can see your comedy not hitting because I mean, I love it, but most people my age are,
they're turned off by it, or just maybe references or things they don't get or don't care.
I mean, most of them probably didn't watch Breaking Bad or anything like that. And they may not be sharp enough to understand what a misdirect is. So
yeah, I just feel like you can get to the point where you're just too generic or you're too safe because I'm worried I'm going to offend this person, or I'm worried these people will be too old or these people will be too young. I mean, you kind of just gotta, I know comics I respect who don't think Bill Burr is funny, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Comedy is subjective.
Yeah.
Do you think Bill Burr gives a shit if everybody thinks he's funny?
Nope.
No. I mean, you just, there's people who hate LeBron James.
Yeah.
And he's arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. I mean, people are going to hate you and like you no matter what. So it's, especially with comedy though, it is definitely subjective, and it's impossible to make everybody happy all the time. I mean, you can have a different perspective or some comics do want to be like real political or try to make it, more serious and try to like push a message. And then there's guys who I really admire who think the whole goal should just be to be silly and make people laugh and give them an escape from the rest of that shit.
Yeah.
So I agree with both. I think both work. But I think both of those comics would mostly agree that it's not. I mean, I feel like most of the comics saying that are comics who are just kind of doing the same shows in the same places, and I don't know.
Yeah.
But even they're having bad shows sometimes, and so then are they gonna change their whole act to try to make it so they just do the same every time? I don't know.
Yeah. And somebody like Stuart Huff, he's not going to be up there doing a bunch of misdirects or dick jokes. It's just not who he is.
Has a message, but it's a positive one. I mean, he leans left, so there's probably some people that lean right that maybe aren't the biggest fans, but in the end, he brings it around where he's like, "Hey, let's all just be better," essentially. And super smart guy. He's always been a guy where I think most comics meet him and they're like, "Why isn't this dude famous?"
Yeah. Well, he doesn't want to be. So
I'm a writer, but I think maybe there is some people who it turns off just because they just want to hear dick jokes and they don't want to be, thoughtful or have to think. But I think he's great. And every place I've ever been, he's one of the comics. When they come in town, there's a line of comics ready to, blow that guy. So he must be doing something right.
Yeah. So what is it about Michigan that produces so many good comics? Because I've talked to you, I've talked to Rob Jenkins, Garrett Elzinga, and I've got more on the hook to talk to, but it seems like and you're all a little bit different, but you guys are all good. And is it because you guys support each other, or what is it that
I think the Michigan scene? I mean, we're all everybody has their own clusters. You've got the Grand Rapids, Lansing, Kalamazoo, Detroit, obviously. But yeah, we all kind of help each other out and support each other. I don't think we support each other as much as we probably should. I mean, there's definitely still some competition, and there's still, unneeded drama here and there, just like any other industry or form of entertainment. And there's always going to be, like I said, competition and people who started at the same time who, are, going at each other because somebody gets something and somebody doesn't, and all bullshit. But for the most part, I think we're supportive of each other. And I think we definitely love the craft, and people are all about the stage time and trying to be good comics. And I don't know. Michigan just has always had, I think, an underrated scene as far as from just a countrywide perspective. I mean, we're not one of the bigger markets, so
yeah,
we're always going to get lost in the shuffle, but I think we're doing all right.
Yeah, I feel like you're just kicking Indiana's ass, and so I want Indiana to step it up.
Maybe. I don't know. There's some Indiana comics I really respect too, but I mean, a lot of the, Dave Dyer's here in town with me. He's one of my best friends in comedy, a guy I've always admired. I think he's really good. He's another guy who I think should have a Comedy Central special. He's always been phenomenal, and he's a Michigan guy. And I mean, some people I think other comics, like if you don't move to a market, they look at you like you were a coward or didn't have the balls, but that's not everybody's goal. Not everybody wants that. And you can be really good at what you do from a smaller market and still be as hard of a worker and be as talented and be as good of a comic. You just didn't ever desire to do that.
Yeah.
Because of wherever you were in life, and it just never worked. But yeah, Michigan, I think, the Midwest in general is just good for comedy. I mean, this is where all the work is. Everybody from the coast are coming here to work clubs anyway.
Yeah.
Or at least they were before, the apocalypse.
Yeah. I've had conversations with, East Coast and West Coast people, and they're like, don't come here. Just don't even do it, because you're not going to get stage time.
Now you couldn't even get on stage in LA now, I think. So
yeah. And New York's the same way. They shut them back down. So yeah,
and I mean, with the internet, there's never been more opportunity to get your name out there and to have platforms and things like you're doing with, the cast that's had success. I mean, you can do that from home, which is great. Yeah. And God, there's so many pros and cons to moving to either one of the coasts. I wish I would have when I was younger, but I didn't. No regrets. And
yeah,
you can still be funny and enjoy what you do, in the Midwest. So
yeah, no doubt. So the last thing I like to ask, and I ask everybody this, what 3 things do you know now that you wish you would have known when you first started doing stand-up?
Oh boy. Number one, I would have realized in the beginning that being successful in comedy has so much more to do with offstage stuff than it does on stage. I mean, we're talking 70-30. I mean, you can be very funny, but if you don't have the offstage business shit together, it doesn't matter. It's really important. It's almost more important to be unique or different than it is to be funny. Mm-hmm. Or to be a great writer. Mm-hmm. So off the bat, I think knowing that the business side and the networking and that can sometimes be more important than being funny, and then just finding a way to separate yourself, especially as a straight white male comic, because there's too many of us. Mm. And then the third thing, I guess, I don't know. I think I would just, like I said, I think as a comedy purist, someone who would have liked to get better quicker. I mean, if you do move to the East Coast specifically, you're going to have a lot more stage time, or at least this is pre-COVID I'm talking. So, I mean, you can develop in 2 years in New York City like you develop here in 10 years. Yeah. Because you're getting on stage so much more. And, but now I don't know. I wouldn't even push people to move. I think you should just value your stage time and don't waste it. I've had so many, like I said, I've done mics and stuff where somebody will go up before me and do really well. And then I'll say to myself, well, shit, I was going to do new stuff, but now I got to do well. I can't let this asshole do well. And then I don't, which is dumb. You gotta swallow your pride and you have to have the balls to be comfortable with bombing and getting that new stuff better to develop material and become a better comic in the long run. And then I mean, there's just other, I mean, even the little things like I said, as far as the business side, who does your album, how you go about doing that, even down to headshots. I'll say this much: you get what you pay for. You can't, if you have your friends do everything for you, you know, at a discount, but they don't really know what they're doing. That can come back to bite you in your ass.
Yeah.
And I think I would have maybe taken it a little easier on social media. Maybe I wouldn't have been so outspoken and so opinionated. You know, that's probably hurt me for sure on the business end, which is unfortunate. But, you know, getting a little older and realizing that you're not changing anybody's mind anyway. So
yeah.
I probably would have just stuck to more on stage stuff or just trying to be funny on the internet. And I don't know. I mean, you the longer you do it, the more you realize what's important and what's not. And you see through all the bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, those are great. Well, this has been fantastic talk. I'm glad we could connect, and we connected within 24 hours after I asked you. So that's pretty cool.
Hell yeah. Well, fortunately for you, I got nothing to do.
Yeah. Well,
hopefully we run into each other again, man, at a mic or something.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, Adam.
Yeah. Take it easy, man.